Today, we're diving into a really powerful idea that's changed the game for how companies find their biggest weaknesses. It's all about a smarter way to audit, a way to stop looking for everything and start looking for what actually matters. So let me ask you a quick question. Picture two different companies getting audited. One company checks absolutely everything with the same amount of attention. The other company, it ignores the small stuff and puts all its energy into the areas with the highest risk. Now, which one of those companies do you think is truly safer? Well, let's play this out. Company A, the one checking everything, is spinning its wheels. It wastes so much time on low-risk stuff that it completely misses a massive fraud problem brewing in a key department. Meanwhile, Company B zeroes in on that exact high-risk area and catches the fraud before it can do real damage. It's pretty obvious, right? The focused approach isn't just more efficient, it's way safer. So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the old way of auditing versus the new. Then, we'll get into what it really means to audit what matters most. We'll walk through the process step by step, check out some real-world examples, talk about the challenges you might face, and wrap up with why this is such a critical skill for your career. All right, first up, Section 1, the old way versus the new. Let's really dig into why that old-school method just doesn't cut it anymore. So what do we even mean by traditional auditing? Honestly, just think of a rigid, dusty old checklist. It's this one-size-fits-all approach where auditors do the exact same thing year after year. Every department gets the same amount of attention, no matter how risky or important it is. It's like checking the fire extinguisher in the break room with the same intensity as the company's entire cybersecurity system. And that's exactly the problem. You waste so much time and money on areas that just don't matter that much. I mean, can you imagine an audit team spending a whole week counting paper clips and petty cash, while millions of dollars in vendor payments barely get a second look? It's a massive waste of resources. And worse, it means the really big, scary risks can go completely unnoticed. Okay, so if the old way is so broken, what's the fix? That brings us to our next section and the hero of our story, the risk-based solution. Risk-based auditing, or RBA, totally flips the script. Instead of starting with that old checklist, it starts with a question. Where could things go really, really wrong? So auditors identify all the potential risks, they rank them by how serious they are, and then they focus their efforts where they'll have the biggest impact. You know, if you only remember one thing from all of this, let it be this right here. Risk-based auditing means auditing what matters the most. It's that simple. It's about putting your energy where the real danger is. But how do you figure out what matters most? Well, it all boils down to a super simple formula. Risk equals impact times likelihood. See, the biggest risks aren't just things that are likely to happen. They're the things that are both likely to happen and would cause a ton of damage if they did. That intersection is the sweet spot where auditors need to live. All right, let's move on to Section 3. That's the theory, but how does this all work in the real world? Let's break down the step-by-step process. So yeah, how do you actually go from this big idea to a concrete plan? What are the moves you need to make? It really comes down to a 7-step process. First, and this is so important, you have to understand the business. You can't find problems if you don't know the territory. Next, you identify the risks, just brainstorming everything that could possibly go wrong. Then comes the key part, risk assessment. This is where you use that impact times likelihood formula to rank all those risks. From there, you develop the audit plan, which is basically your battle plan that focuses only on the top risks. Step 5 is actually performing the audit, getting in there and doing the work. After that, step 6, you report your findings to management. And finally, number 7, you follow up to make sure the problems you found actually get fixed. Theory is great, but let's make this real. We're moving on to Section 4, RBA in the real world, to see how this all comes to life. Okay, so let's use a simple example. Imagine a company has a petty cash drawer. Inside, there's maybe 10,000 rupees. Now, that same company pays its vendors, right? And over the course of a year, that adds up to 10 crore rupees. Just think about the difference in scale there for a second. And this table just says it all. A traditional audit would treat that petty cash and the vendor payments with equal importance. It's crazy, but a risk-based audit, it gives a quick look at the petty cash, minimal focus, and puts almost all its energy into that 10 crore rupee vendor payment system. Now, where do you think you're more likely to find a problem that could sink the company? And this idea applies everywhere, especially in something like banking with anti-money laundering. Instead of treating every single customer the same, banks use RBA to focus on high-risk customers, like politically exposed persons or PEPs. They look extra hard at really big transactions, and they flag money moving through suspicious countries. It's just a way more effective way to fight financial crime.
Now, look, making the switch isn't always easy, so for Section 5, let's do a little reality check and talk about the challenges and best practices.
You can definitely hit some bumps in the road. I mean, what if you get the risk assessment wrong from the start? Or what if you just don't have the data you need? Sometimes management pushes back, and probably the biggest challenge is that risks are always changing. What's low risk today could be your biggest problem tomorrow. But here's how you get ahead of that. The best practices are pretty clear. You have to update your risk assessments all the time. It's a living thing. You should use data analytics tools to find patterns you'd otherwise miss. Keep talking to management so they understand what you're doing and why. And most importantly, when you find a problem, don't just put a Band-Aid on it. Focus on fixing the root cause. So we've covered the why, and the how. For our last section, let's bring it all home and talk about why this is so important for your career. Let me be really clear about this. If your career is in audit, risk, or compliance, understanding risk-based auditing isn't just a nice to have. It is a core fundamental skill. It's at the heart of the big professional certifications, like the CIA, CRMA, and CPA. Knowing this stuff doesn't just make you better at your job, it makes you way more valuable to any company you work for. So we'll leave you with this final thought. Now that you know this smarter, more focused way to look for trouble, take a second. Think about your own job, your own company. What's the one big risk, the one with huge impact and a real likelihood of happening that maybe, just maybe, everyone has been overlooking?